Good evening. First tonight, parts of the West now have the highest COVID rates in England, with false negative results from PCR tests being blamed. It's after a lab wrongly told thousands of people that they didn't have COVID. Health officials say that meant people who had the virus didn't isolate, so they've spread it around their communities. Well, Andrew Plant has been across this story from the very start for us. Andrew, what do you know?
Hi Seb, yeah, I think it's completely fair to say that this has caused a real mess. 43,000 of those PCR tests analysed by that lab in Wolverhampton between the 8th of September and the 12th of October, sent back to people who'd taken those tests, telling them they were virus-free, when in fact they actually had COVID. And we already know from hearing people's stories that a lot of them didn't have particularly severe symptoms and just went out there and carried on as normal. Now we're told those mistakes have been rectified, and it has led to a real explosion in the coronavirus rates here in the West. Some places jumping right to the top of the league table out of 315 local authorities. Some places in Gloucestershire seeing their COVID rates go up literally hundreds of % in just a couple of days.
This time last week, Gloucester and Tewkesbury were bottom of the national coronavirus table. 7 days later, both have seen record rises. Tewkesbury up by 449% almost overnight. Some of that the effects of 43,000 wrong PCR test results. Some almost certainly from people who were told they didn't need to isolate and were inadvertently spreading the virus. Many, though, say they isolated anyway, despite being told they were clear of COVID.
You just want to know what's wrong with you. And you know, when everybody's sort of painting the gold standard PCR tests as the test results that you go with, how can you almost say, no, I don't know, absolutely, this is what's wrong with me.
We don't know exactly how many of those 43,000 wrong test results were in each area. Anyone affected is being contacted privately. Some receiving this message saying, given the date your result was issued, there is no further action for you to take. Others, more recent ones, being asked to book another test. Across the West, there are record rises. Somerset County Council said today the rise, which will continue upwards for several more days, is mainly due to the lab false negatives and community spread thereafter. Slowly, the effects of the errors are becoming clear. Falsely low virus rates now seeing huge jumps. People who've lost wages for taking time off without a positive PCR. Others realising they may have exposed friends and family or sent COVID-positive children back into school. Today, the UK Health Security Agency said investigations are ongoing at the Mensa lab in Wolverhampton to find out the exact cause of the issue. We have contacted all those where there was a possibility that they may have still been infectious to advise them to take another test. Meanwhile, Somerset West and Taunton and Bath and North East Somerset have both seen virus rates more than double in the last few days as the true level of the virus finally becomes clear.
So in other words, there was essentially far more virus out there in our local authorities than anybody knew because of those errors at that Wolverhampton lab. Now, I'm going to put the latest coronavirus table up on your screen for you now. I'm afraid it makes very unpleasant reading. In fact, I've never seen a table quite like it in the past 15 months of this pandemic. You can see at the top there, Bath and North East Somerset, the very highest rate in the whole of England with 878 cases per 100,000. Now, I really don't have time to read all of these out, so we'll leave it up on your screen. Try and spot where you live. Needless to say, everywhere has got an up arrow. Somerset West and Taunton in second place there with 873 cases per 100,000. And while you're looking at that table, bear in mind, in case you were wondering, we did go back to the UK Health Security Agency and ask them, have they just retrospectively dumped all 43,000 cases onto the figures? That would, of course, cause spikes, but they're told, no, that's not what they've done. They haven't added those cases back onto the figures, so we have to assume that these are now the true rates that are washing around each of our 17 local authority areas, and every single one of those places is above the national average. Now, even down at the bottom of the table there, places like Cotswold and Gloucester with 478 cases per 100,000 and 463, still some of the highest rates in the country, and lots of our areas now seeing the highest rates of any time during this entire pandemic. And we already know a lot of those cases are being driven by school-aged children. Lots of schools now saying that they're reintroducing some restrictions, social distancing, masks in classrooms and corridors, even some ending early before half term and switching to Zoom learning instead. And that is something that Scott Ellis has been looking into today.